Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in just a few minutes here. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in just 2 minutes here. Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. Welcome, comrades and friends, to Workers' World Party's weekly broadcast, where hundreds of revolutionaries from across the world gather to strategize, to analyze, and to build the struggle for a socialist future, a workers' world. I am your host, Ezra Echo. My pronouns are they, them, and Z here. I'm a member of the Workers' World Buffalo branch, a non-binary lesbian member of the party's LGBTQ and Women and Oppressed Genders caucuses. The courageous Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama opened a major struggle against the US's second largest corporation. This campaign, led by Black workers in the US South, is just the opening shot by the working class in our struggle to rebuild power after decades of capitalist offenses. Despite Amazon's brutal theft of the election through multiple illegal anti-worker methods, the struggle in Bessemer is not over. We in Workers' World Party, along with our allies in the workers' movement and on other left parties, initiated a campaign called Support Alabama Amazon Union, or supportamazonworkers.org, to build mass solidarity with the Bessemer workers. Hundreds of solidarity rallies showed the immense solidarity with these courageous Amazon workers in Alabama and beyond. What can we do now to build solidarity with these workers as they fight to challenge the stolen election? How should we view and reflect on the results of this election? What are the next steps in this struggle? How can we continue to build on this energy to spark broader efforts to organize the unorganized? Tonight, I am excited to welcome you to this exclusive interview with Workers' World's first secretary, Larry Holmes, and Chris Smalls, former Amazon worker and founder of the Congress of Essential Workers. I'd like to introduce my co-host for tonight, Ted Kelly, along with Miranda Chrisman. Ted is the co-chair of the Prisoner Solidarity Committee and co-editor of Tear Down the Walls, the weekly section of Workers' World's newspaper dedicated to the abolition of prisons.
Thanks, Ezra. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being on tonight. Before we get started, I wanted to raise up the name of Mumia Abu-Jamal. Mumia, as many people know, is a longtime political prisoner who is going to turn 67 years old on April 24th. And as I'm sure folks have heard, after contracting COVID-19 and developing congestive heart disease, Mumia is currently hospitalized tonight and is awaiting open heart surgery. I just wanted to raise that we demand the unconditional release of Mumia Abu-Jamal from state custody and urge our viewers to visit letmumiaout.com and to visit mobilizationformumia.com, and also to attend a series of events and demonstrations that are going to be taking place next weekend in order to build the movement to free Mumia Abu-Jamal once and for all. There's going to be a virtual event on the 23rd, as well as a series of protests in Philadelphia and elsewhere around the country on the 24th and the 25th. I know that this is a good place because both Larry and Chris are supporters of Mumia, and I just wanted to make sure that we raise this up at the start of tonight because of the current crisis with Mumia's health. So I just wanted to say, brick by brick, wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Thanks for that, comrades. And now to get back to our topic for tonight, Ezra, this union drive is something that, I think we're going to be talking about how historic it is. And I think you and I are relatively new to the movement, like Chris, like we're of a different generation than Mumia, for instance. Have we seen anything like this before in our lifetimes?
Honestly, I don't think we have. Not anything that's this huge going up against what is the second largest company in the United States. It's absolutely historic, but many of us who are of the younger generation are kind of just coming into this framework of how we think about labor now in terms of how it actually is, that constantly our surplus value is being stolen from us every single day that we are workers in this state. So I think a lot of the movement is just getting to that point, and that's also why it's so important and historic, because we're seeing now more than ever how much they want to steal the little power that we do have from us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Comrade. Let me just say before we get started, if you have already shared the event, please take a second to go to Workers World's Facebook page, facebook.com/Workers World Party, and share the event with your friends and in your Facebook groups and pages. That would help us enormously to reach more members of our class. We also encourage you to share your comments at Workers World on Twitter. We're live on YouTube. We're also live on Twitch tonight. We're piloting our new Twitch channel. So please make sure to share the live stream on Facebook and Twitter and wherever you can post it on social media.
Now we'd like to introduce our two guests tonight. We are going to be joined by both Larry Holmes, first Secretary of Workers' World Party and leader of the Support Alabama Amazon Union campaign, a mass solidarity campaign which coordinated over 100 solidarity actions with the Amazon Union struggle, and Chris Smalls, leader of the Congress of Essential Workers, who organized a walkout last year at the JFK Amazon facility in New York City. Welcome to you both. So, first question, we'll have Larry start off. Now, we know that the Alabama Amazon workers lost in their effort to unionize by pretty serious margins. Many people are quick to blame the weaknesses of the union's effort. What do you think about the results of and what is the revolutionary way to respond?
Well, good evening, comrades everywhere. We'll be, along with other revolutionaries and pro-worker organizations and activists, analyzing this. This is just the beginning. But the most important thing, comrades, is for nobody to be sad. What's that saying? Don't mourn organized. Nobody should be shocked by what happened. In fact, it was predictable. When you consider what this behemoth, monstrous Amazon global octopus smothering everybody, and its desire to, never be unionized and to fight unionization with respect to Amazon and everywhere else. And Jeff Bezos, the richest individual in the world, pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into a massive, ugly union busting campaign. I think that instead of sadness or regret, our response has to be rage over how Amazon's union busting was exposed. And the only response, really the only response, is a vow for revenge. For those workers who fought for the union in Bessemer, Alabama, and they're feeling kind of low, we have to promise them that we will avenge them, that this is not over, and we feel you and we're with you. And whether it's in Staten Island, whether it's in Iowa, whether it's in Chicago, whether it's in California, this is just the beginning. This is one battle in a war, and we're going to win that war. I would add that going forward, and this is one of the lessons coming out of Bessemer, workers who want to organize Amazon, who are Amazon workers, they need to form organizing committees of the workers who are down to do this. It's a big responsibility. They need to form, in warehouse, in plant, worksite committees that are already functioning like a union. In other words, before they even deal with the question of a vote or being able to engage in collective bargaining, being recognized by Amazon, the first thing they got to do is organize. You organize inside, find the best workers, find the militants, find the ones who are down, and start acting like a union, which means fighting for the demands that the workers are making against speed up, against surveillance, defending those workers who are retaliated against for speaking up, like what happened to, Comrade Chris over here, who was fired for leading a walkout, demanding, protection from COVID a year ago. The other thing is, and this is important because all of us don't work and can't work for Amazon. Some of us are retired. A lot of us are unemployed. A lot more people are unemployed than a year ago. We need to do what we tried to do on February and March 20th, where we had these days, international days of solidarity with Amazon workers, and that's organized support for these organizing drives outside of the warehouses so that more working people, millions of working people potentially, can say, I may not work for Amazon, but I support what they're doing. That makes a difference. Believe me, it puts pressure and takes it to Amazon. It takes it to the government and all of the enemies of workers. And for those purposes, I think that what we're going to see is a stepped up effort to organize workers' assemblies. One of the groups that I work with in New York is the Workers' Assemblies Against Racism. And we weren't the only solidarity organizers in New York. Chris was out there, with the Congress of Essential Workers. We had a lot of unions doing work, rallies in Harlem and whatnot. But WAR, that's the acronym of the Workers' Assemblies Against Racism. We did a lot of that work. And I think going forward, you're going to see and need to see workers' assemblies being organized in every city, large, medium-sized, and small, whose job is to do this kind of solidarity work, because that's part of transforming the working class from a class that is constrained and tied to the Democratic Party or constrained by labor bureaucrats whose heart is not in the right place, and liberated and inclusive instead of exclusive. Thanks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Larry. Chris, do you have any thought about that, about the demoralization? Do you want to respond?
Absolutely. Comrade Larry couldn't have said it any better. We witnessed pretty much what I kind of expected myself, and once again, we can't be discouraged. I know there's a lot of emotions behind it. We expected, it looked like a good, successful union drive with the prominent people that visited Alabama. But we got to remember, the intangibles that we're up against at all times. And Amazon, that facility is a fairly new facility. Amazon was hiring and firing the entire time. Workers, literally the ones I've spoken to down there when I traveled down there, they just got hired 2 weeks, 3 weeks prior. They didn't even know what the hell they was getting themselves into. They didn't even receive their ballots yet. So the union or the organizers have to make a dedication to continue to unionize and talk to these workers up until the last day. You cannot be complacent with this company at all. Any second that you're not talking to a worker, any day you take off from talking to workers, Amazon is winning, because this company is 24/7. They don't never close down. It is a machine that will chew you up and spit you right back out. A hire and fire process. And we had to remember, like Larry said, this is just the beginning. Bessemer sparked that fuse. And I believe the next effort, even if it's in Bessemer again, maybe this time they reevaluate their campaign, they build up the workers committee. The workers now have more influence. You got to think about these entry-level workers that just got hired with the company. How much influence do they have over the next employee that just got hired with them? So these things matter. And if that building was to try these efforts maybe another year down the line with the same people that started from the beginning, now they're more seasoned. Now they know more people. They know more departments. They know people in the night shift. They know people in the day shift. Now the efforts will be in our favor. The odds will be more in our favor. And I think that they have a possibility to do that again. And in the meantime, in between time, we can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. And I think starting right here at my home base in New York and Staten Island is definitely our next short-term goal and mission. And I'm looking forward to getting started with that.
Right on. Thanks, Chris. And I think that's, it's that kind of insight that the organizers need to have. You as a Amazon worker, a former Amazon worker yourself, and you're still in touch with so many people who are still employed at Amazon. Could you tell us a little bit about what what the effort is in Staten Island?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're in a grassroots moment right now. We are working on the foundation, putting together our campaign for ourselves. We started off with we're going to an independent route. Pretty much go the independent route. The workers are creating a union called Amazon Labor Union. You can follow it on Twitter right now as we speak at Amazon Labor Union. There already is a website at amazonlaborunion.org. So we have certain things in place. We're looking to get off and running when connected with workers next week. And we're going to try to, once again, do what Bessemer did, but we're going to do it the New York way. I think if we put things on Front Street, the way we've been advocating against this company for the last year here in New York, we've been exposing them and all the negative things they've been doing, negative practices, the negligence that they've been applying to these workers, the families that lost loved ones. We got to incorporate that. We brought a worker up here whose family, was devastated by the loss of a mother, a Black woman, 38 years old, Pushan Brown, that worked for the company. We got to merge all these stories. Something that, once again, Alabama dropped the ball on. They could have brought a lot of workers from the outside communities to come tell their stories to resonate with the workers. So I think that we're going to have a different approach, especially being here in Staten Island, where I used to work, obviously, and I opened that building for the last 3 years now. I know a lot of people there still, and they still connect with me daily. So that puts us at an advantage when we go out there to start unionizing. So I'm hoping everything goes accordingly and we gain as much support as possible because we're going to need it.
Right on, Chris. I think we're going to hear an announcement from Ezra now. And Larry, just so you know, could you try turning your mic off and on again? Because there's a little bit of a rattling noise or something while you were talking. Ezra, you want to go to our announcement?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Workers' World newspaper has been in continuous circulation since 1959. During the first months of the COVID-19 pandemic, the print edition was temporarily suspended, but we are happy to announce that we have resumed printing physical copies of the Workers' World newspaper again on a monthly basis. Each week, we run our section Tear Down the Walls, which is about the struggle for the abolition of the prison industrial complex. The Prisoner Solidarity Committee has a long history of solidarity with imprisoned members of our class. From our inside report from the Attica Uprising in 1971 to our weekly coverage today, you can subscribe to receive Workers' World newspaper and Tear Down the Walls by email at workers.org.
Thanks, Ezra. And I want to encourage everybody who's watching right now. If you're on Zoom, you can send your questions in using the Q&A section or type your question in the comment. And if we have time at the end, we'll take some questions towards the end. Larry, do you want to test your sound again?
How's this? Am I good?
That sounds much better. Yeah. Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm actually not using the mic. I'm using the laptop sound, but it
Go
is
figure.
what it is.
Yeah, go figure. Thanks, comrade, for taking care of that.
Yeah.
This question's for anybody. About 10% of workers are unionized at this time. And that's down from 30% during much of the 20th century. What do you think it's going to take for us to organize the unorganized? And, for an organization like Workers' World, what is the role of socialists and communists in this effort to organize?
You want to crack at that, Chris? I'll
Sure.
follow up on you.
Sure. So can you repeat the first part again, Ted?
Yeah, it was just about the decline in union membership. Like we're somewhere around 10%. It used to be 3 times that,
So what do we do to
organize the unorganized? Yeah.
Organize the unorganized. So I believe, once again, the spark is lit. We've seen it since the Great Depression in the 1930s, the economic collapse, and then there was an uprising of unions. And this is the same thing with COVID-19, obviously last year, I think roughly around 15 million people unemployed. I'm one of them. And now you're seeing the uprising and not only the labor movement, but social injustice, environmental, all these different movements are uprising right now. And when it comes to the labor movement, I think the one thing that we can start with, obviously, is trying to break up these big tech companies, break up these huge corporations, and once again, unionize, fight for unionization, fight for the PRO Act, apply the pressure that we already been applying to our elected officials, because that's what it's really about. Getting to having a voice in the White House, the working class having a voice in the White House, which we don't have. We don't have anybody in the White House besides, maybe Bernie Sanders and a select few that is really speaking for us, or really fighting for us is a difference. We need more of that. We need more of them in there talking about labor. And we've been doing a great job of getting labor written in these major media outlets. The New York Times is writing about labor, the LA Times, all over the country. Major media has been talking about labor, something that hasn't been done in a long time. So us organizers, us activists, the ones that are out there putting the work in the streets, we have to stay the course. We have to stay resilient. We have to try to do demonstrations. I believe in doing demonstrations at least twice a month, if possible, at least once a month, showing that power and that solidarity is building. It's not decreasing, it's increasing. I know I would have never been where I am today if it wasn't for, the people I connected with and the relationships I built. So that shows right there that one individual, myself, and several other activists, even in a year's span, look how far that we came. We traveled the country, we built solidarity, we got attention drawn to Amazon, particularly negative attention. We got Jeff Bezos losing his mind. We got Jeff Bezos, trying to smear me, trying to, do things that's just unprecedented. So applying pressure with activism and organizing is 24/7. And I want to reiterate that 24/7, you never stop. You organize 24/7, continue applying pressure, especially to elected officials right now, while the window of opportunity is here.
I would add to that, look, comrades, capitalism and the capitalists are always against workers and oppressed people organizing to fight for the things that they need to survive under this horrible capitalist system. But that's been even more acute over the last half century. Since the 1970s, there has been a stepped up class-wide, that is capitalist class-wide war on the notion that workers have a right to a union. It's been going on for 50 years. And now we're at a tipping point. That's the reason why, union density is so low compared to other periods, even 25 or 30 years ago, certainly more than 50 years ago. But the pandemic, the anger and rage of people over the murder of innocent people like George Floyd, and they killed a young 13-year-old Black man in Chicago. I think it was just revealed, and young Dante Wright, just shot, a few miles away from where George Floyd was murdered. This has created the basis for a turnaround based on people just saying, I'm tired of this shit, and rising up and saying no more. That's what happened in the 1930s, really. And I think that we're going through that same period. And so for radicals, for socialists and communists, of all generations, perhaps maybe more so for young people who can do more. You know, those of us who are older play a different role, more mentors, but we're still around, we ain't going yet. This is a challenge to y'all. If you're really radical, if you're really, you know, true to your, we got to get rid of capitalism and come up with something better, socialism, etc. If you're really about that and not just, you know, talking about it and reading about it, which is good, but you want to do something about it, this is a challenge to you, comrades. Are you going to let capitalism say, you can't organize workers anymore? Nah, we won't let it happen at Amazon, the biggest company around, and we won't let it happen at some small company. We're not going to let it happen. Are you going to let them do that? This is where you have to throw down, because what they're saying is that we're not going to let you organize workers unless you kick our ass. Who is going to lead the ass kicking? It's going to need people who have a deeper commitment. And those are the socialists and the communists and the radicals. And it's what you did, you know, 85 years ago when those auto workers, you know, for Chrysler in Flint, Michigan, had a sit down and occupation. And that started something, you know. We need that same kind of action today. So it's a challenge. That's the way you should look at it. Don't get demoralized. Don't get confused. Let's unconfuse ourselves. Let's ask ourselves, are we going to take this? And what is our responsibility? And how are we going to rise to it? Because a lot of people, course of history, in fact, is dependent on what we do.
You know, Larry, both you and Chris just reminded me of a story that Deirdre Griswold, managing editor of Workers' World, a great comrade in the party, the story she tells about the labor actions that would take place in the steel plants in Buffalo, and how, you know, Chris mentioned bringing in family members and bringing in the community, and when they made it illegal for the workers to go join a picket, it was the, you know, the real radicals and the kick-ass socialists and who said, okay, well, maybe the workers can't go on the picket, but they didn't say anything about the family members and the kids of the workers, and they're the ones that held the line and, you know, beat the asses of the scabs trying to get through, you know.
That's
and
right.
It's like, so we got to be creative in that way. But I think, and, you know, Chris,
Yeah.
like, you know, you talking about being unemployed, I'm unemployed now too, and it's like, well, unemployed workers are still workers, even if we're, you know, not working. And it's like, that's another element. It's like, we got so many people out of work right now. Let's bring them in, you know?
And I agree. Not only bring them in, yeah, if you're unemployed, we got things for you to do. You know, so trust me, you know,
yeah, there is work to be done. Yeah.
Work to be done.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to our next announcement now. If you like this revolutionary Marxist analysis, if you are interested in joining a revolutionary Marxist-Leninist party that is helping to organize the unorganized, we encourage that you check out workers.org/join and join our party. Fill out the join form there, and an organizer will be in touch with you as soon as possible. And our next question is, one remedy to stop the criminal efforts of companies like Amazon, which steal and cheat during union elections, is a law called Protect the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act. What do you all think about this law? What will it take to make it a reality?
Well, you know, the first thing to know about the PRO Act, which everybody in labor, especially after what happened in Alabama, is saying it's got to be passed, it's got to be passed. The fact of the matter is it's not going to be passed because people who say they're for the act don't have enough votes in the Senate. They need 60 votes. So it's kind of like a BS thing a little bit for the politicians, because they can go to a rally and put out press releases and say that they're for it, but they know that the way things are now, it's not going to get passed, not in 2021 or 2022, the way things are. What we have said is that Biden, who speaks for capitalism, and claims to be quote unquote pro-labor, he can say, the hell with Congress and the Senate. I'm going to issue an executive order that puts these measures that are supposed to help workers organize into law right away. And we have got a petition, and we're going to organize a campaign around demanding that Biden take executive action. That's what presidents do. So, if he's supposed to be so pro-labor, put actions where his mouth is and issue an executive order. Now what the Protect the Right to Organize Act is, it's important. It's important, comrades. It's very hard for workers to organize against their boss. It always has been, but especially, as I mentioned a little while ago, recently it's been even harder. The deck is stacked against workers. So there's some good things. For example, if this law were enacted, it would overturn quote unquote right to work laws, and more than half of the states have right to work laws. This means, among other things, that unions cannot have their employer collect dues. And this hampers unions in a big way, so the law would overturn that. It would end the ability of Amazon and other bosses to have these mandatory anti-union meetings. And supposedly part of the law would be stronger penalties for all of the union busting stuff that Amazon did to crush this union drive in Alabama. Part of the law would mean that you couldn't use someone's immigration status against them if they're organizing. A lot of times workers who are without documents, if they try to organize a union, all the bosses got to do is say, I'm going to call ICE. And so, my understanding is, if the law passed, it couldn't do that. There are measures that make it legally easier to organize, especially determining what a bargaining unit is. Some of you have heard that initially the bargaining unit, the size of the bargaining unit at the Bessemer plant was about 1,500 workers, but it got bigger. And as it got bigger, it became more difficult for the union to prevail. And a lot of times what Amazon and other bosses will do is they'll pad on to the bargaining unit because they know it's more difficult to sort of hold on to a lot of workers. And they'll make sure that there are employees that they know are not strong for the union and will vote for the company, So that's supposed to end this. But the most important thing, comrades, about the Protect the Right to Organize, and this is what we learned in the 30s and many other struggles, just passing some law or even Biden issuing an executive order, which is what he must do immediately, that in and of itself won't do it. The workers must organize and fight for this. You cannot rely on the government, whether it's the president or whether it's a Congress or a governor or a mayor, to afford you the right to organize. You must take that for yourself. It's working class self-determination. You must win these things by organizing and fighting and raising hell. That must be the way you do it. And I think that people should try to, echo this message and make it as loud as possible. In 2 weeks, there's May Day 2021. I think our party, Workers' World Party, which you should join if you're not a member, we're thinking about ways to intervene. We might even organize something like organize the unorganized week or month of action with street meetings and classes, and a webinar, and talk about, what people need to know about this law that we're discussing, and also the history of workers organizing themselves, and the fact that, the major rallying call that has to be not only a rally call but put into practice by militants like a lot of people in this meeting, is we've got to organize the unorganized. And again, joining a workers' party like Workers' World Party, becoming involved in a workers' assembly, and there are going to be more of them, like the Southern Workers' Assembly. This is where leftists and radicals, whether they were radicalized by the Bernie Sanders campaign or Black Lives Matter or some other issues, this is where we got to be turning now. It's got to be a turn toward organizing the workers. A lot of people on the left are like, well, we can't do that. It's too big, it's too big. No, we got to say, no, 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 no. If not us, who the hell else? And that's what Workers' World Party believes.
It's important too, because you know, before the Bessemer workers started this union drive, I think you'd hear a lot of people saying it's impossible to even attempt to unionize Amazon. And you know, it's not until workers like the workers in Bessemer, like Chris, you know, like Comrade, when you put your neck out there, really, you know, and you know, whenever somebody takes that step, the movement needs to move with them. You know, that's the leadership. You know, if we're going to be turning towards the working class, we need to know when the working class is ready to move. And I think that's an important part of it too. Chris, did you have any remarks or any thoughts about the PRO Act?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, Larry hit it on the head. You know, I would just say right now our obligation to the PRO Act and getting it passed is not going to pass in the Senate. We know that. Once again, applying pressure to Biden with this petition. So I would love to amplify that any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to definitely be talking about it when we do our demonstrations coming up on May Day. And I advise everybody else to do the same. You know, we all got to be on one accord. David versus Goliath. We all David.
And that slingshot looks a whole lot bigger when we have a lot of hands on it, you know?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll just say here that if you want to donate to help us continue these amazing and educational webinars and help us continue the struggle in general, you can donate to us at our Venmo is at Workers World, and the website is workersworld.org or workers.org/donate. And our Patreon is also patreon.com/WWP, which supports subscriptions for hundreds of incarcerated workers who get our paper for free.
Thanks, Ezra. Yeah, just on the Patreon in particular, you know, it's the print issue that goes into these concentration camps for poor and oppressed people, because you know, a lot of people on the inside don't have internet access the way we do, of course. And you know, it's one way that I mean, if we want to talk about sectors of the working class that people say, oh, it's too hard to organize incarcerated workers, right? But that is one way. Like, we need to get information to them. You know, it's a lot easier to control the information. In the prisons, they make it next to impossible to organize. I mean, there's a lot of connections to be drawn, honestly, between working in an Amazon facility and, you know, working in being an incarcerated worker, you know.
Ted, I wanted to tell you and the audience something I never told you before. Thanks to you and the paper, you know, my father's incarcerated. And last year, when my story broke and you did a story on me, you published an article about me. That article reached my father and he wrote me a letter. So the audience, you know, this is important. So I advise you guys to get involved and donate, because it helped my father understand what I was doing on the outside. You know, so thank you, Ted. I never told you, but I'm glad I just sparked it. I remember to tell you. So thank you again, and what you're doing. It definitely helps, and I appreciate that. My father do as well. You know, he's like, wow, and he wrote me a very long letter. We haven't spoken in a while, so it was great to connect with him that way. And it's all due to the work you've done. So thank you again, comrade.
I'm so glad to hear that, Chris. Man, Thanks for letting us know. And I'm glad. I mean, that's one thing, like, especially when folks on the inside see the steps that people like yourself are taking, you know, being like, wow, if it can happen there, why not right here where I'm at, you know? Let's talk about just that, about building those kinds of organizations. You know, Larry mentioned the Southern Workers Assembly, and the Workers Assembly Against Racism, which was out at the Staten Island, the demonstration you had outside of JFK 8 recently. What's the role that workers' assemblies could play in rejuvenating the workers' movement, and could this be a revolutionary style of organizing?
100%. Oh, you want to go, comrade?
No. I'll wait.
Yeah, I just want to say 100%. You know, Larry and War particularly, it was an instant connection. You know, we didn't even have to really have long conversations. I think our messages and our what I like to say, our policies and what we're fighting for and demanding and advocating for in the streets, they just aligned, and that type of solidarity is what we need. They didn't. Some people obviously didn't even know who I was until they met me, and it's no shame there. You know, we just gotta remember that we're in a struggle, we're in a fight, we're in a war, and we gotta make sure that we're educating people and getting this message out there by any means necessary, and doing these solidarity events, like Larry said, making them international and intergenerational. Those are the key things that we need right now. We got to make sure, once again, when we do these campaigns, that we're reaching the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, the 20-year-olds, the young adults that are still living home with their parents that maybe don't even know anything about what a union represents. So we got to start from the grassroots there as well. You know, making these home visits and visiting folks in the community, getting the churches involved. You know, we gotta make sure that we are, once again, spreading the knowledge and the education of all these struggles. Anytime we have the opportunity to connect with assemblies and coalitions and different type of organizations and movements, so to speak. So I'm just happy that it's really, once again, Amazon is under a microscope right now. And I think the iron is hot. And after Bessemer, yeah, the emotions are still here. Like, we're still raving about it. You know, people are still upset. We got to transition that energy and look for an alternative solution. And I think the alternative solution is to continue fighting and try again. Dust your shoulders off and try again, in the words of the great Aaliyah. You know, that's the song I'm thinking in my head right now. You know, you dust your shoulders off and you try again. And once again, we're going to continue to do that, starting here in home base in New York and Staten Island for sure.
I would add to that, you know, we need to support unions. They have changed the life in a positive way for millions of workers, affording them a decent wage, healthcare benefits, the ability to retire with a pension, having a voice, you know, in on the job against harassment and the brutality of capitalism. This is not the revolution. And all of us have our eyes on the prize, which is a revolution in another system. But until we get there, unions will be a very important part of that. But the unions have contradictions, comrades. The unions have been under a lot of pressure since that period when many powerful people in the capitalist system on Wall Street said, well, we tolerated y'all because we were afraid of y'all raising hell and maybe having a socialist revolution. But going forward, capitalism can't really make any more concessions to you. And as a matter of fact, capitalism can't even concede to your existence. So therefore, we're going to wage a war on you to destroy you. And that's been the period that we've been in for many, many decades, you know. And the labor movement has not responded in a way that is healthy and that will ensure its survival, which is basically militancy and class struggle. So therefore we have a labor movement that in technical terms is small and represents about 10% of the workers, meaning that the overwhelming majority of the workers, not to mention unemployed people, are not in the labor movement. What the workers' assemblies are, and this is why they're so necessary. This is why there has to be a national movement to breathe life into these workers' assemblies. The workers' assemblies will close that gap between the limitations of organized labor as it currently exists. And it's in transformation in a positive direction, slow and painful. And maybe what happened in Amazon will be like a kick in its ass and speed that transformation up. That's the right response to it. But the workers' assemblies are like the link between the organized labor movement and everybody else who's not in the union movement, because the union movement is not in its present form inclusive enough. So if you look at it this way, you understand that the workers' assemblies is a way to revolutionize the labor movement, to transform the labor movement from being exclusive to inclusive. And that is especially beneficial to the most oppressed, to women, to Black and brown people, to young people, to people who are the victims of police racist terror, to migrant workers without documents, to gig workers, to Uber drivers, to fast food workers, to trans, workers who are forced to do sex work. All of these workers are part of our class. And they have to know that, and they have to know that we all have each other's back. And the workers' assemblies is about that. Like Chris is organizing with his comrades inside the Staten Island warehouse. That warehouse is as big as Bessemer, right? It's about 6,000 workers. See, what we'll do as a workers' assembly in New York, we'll be there for them. And for any other workers in an Amazon facility in this vicinity, or any other, employer, we'll be there to say, we're going to organize people. Some of these people are retired. Some of these people are students. Some of these people are unemployed. Some of these people, are Black Lives Matter activists. But they're all part of the working class, you see. And we're going to organize them to do what they can do to support you. And that's not just, feel good. That's decisive.
Thank you, Larry. That's very moving and eye-opening. So it looks like we just have one more question for you. What would you tell the Bessemer workers who voted for the union? What would you tell other workers fighting for a union at Amazon or anywhere else?
Stay the course, stay resilient. It's not over. And I think they know that. They know Amazon spent millions of dollars against them. They know that they sparked the fuse. And they know that they still can overcome this first loss. I understand it was a lopsided vote, and Amazon sitting on their high horse right now, and they sent out a message to every employee in their network. Not once, but twice. I think Jeff Bezos just sent out a letter today, his last letter to the employees as CEO. He mentioned the Alabama vote, saying, and he's speaking for y'all. And that's another issue y'all gotta realize, and I'm talking to the workers of Amazon and especially Alabama, these folks that don't represent our communities, the 1% class, the billionaires and the millionaires, the multimillionaires, they don't come from our communities, but yet they're the ones making decisions for us and speaking for us. We got Jay Carney tweeting at politicians, telling them what is going on in our warehouses, in our communities, as we are delivering the packages, saying that basically the peeing in the bottles is unfounded, that workers are happy working at Amazon. The majority of workers don't complain about anything. These people that don't do what we do are speaking for you. That has to stop. We deserve our voice to be heard in the White House, not the other way around. And that's what the workers of Alabama got to realize. The company is talking for you. The company is saying you can't unionize. 85% Black population, Black women, especially 80% Black women. You can't organize. You are being silenced right now. So what I'm saying to them, don't let that happen. I think Larry already said it. We cannot allow them to do that. We have to fight. We have to radicalize. We have to come together. We have to just stay resilient and stay the course. Dust your shoulders off and try again. And I know that they absolutely will. That is a state that is known for its history. Look at the history there. John Lewis, Selma, Martin Luther King. It's all right there. It's all right there. It started right there in Alabama. So they have to understand their value. And when workers understand their value, they understand how much power they have. Jeff Bezos can never do the jobs that you guys do every single day. So why would you let this man speak for you? So fight for what you want. Continue to try to organize, build up your committee there, and try again. And I guarantee you this time around, you'll be successful.
May I add this too? This is not on this. I mean, Chris just brought that home on our message to these workers who we embrace. They're brave. They're brave. And like Chris said, they'll have another day. Just one battle. They'll have another day. And it's up to us, comrades, to tell them that what they did was righteous. And it don't matter if they didn't make it this time. They learn. But I want to answer a question that the comrade put in the chat, and that was, what's the difference between a workers' assembly and a union? One of the good things, but also contradictions of unions is that unions are based on industry. They're based on workplace. You can join the union if it's a unionized place and you're working, let's say, I don't know, for a big company, name anyone, AT&T, whatever. That's good. But the contradiction or limitation is that the tendency of those workers and the leadership of those workers, and I'm generalizing, there's always exceptions, is that their consciousness, who they feel tied to, what they feel responsible about, is often limited to other AT&T workers or other workers in a certain industry, in a certain place, a restaurant, whatever. I think that all workers are moving in a direction where they're seeing the commonality. They're seeing what they have in common with workers in all industries everywhere, and they're getting beyond the confines, the artificial boundaries, really, of where you work and geography, and language and culture and all that stuff. But it's not happening fast enough. Now, a workers' assembly does not have the limitations of a union. A workers' assembly is not based on industry or where you work or whether you work. Everyone is welcome. Matter of fact, we encourage everyone to join. There's no litmus test. All you have to be is for the workers and willing to fight and donate time for the struggle of the workers and the oppressed. So that's the difference. In some ways, The workers' assemblies maybe are like the old school IWW, when they talked about the need to, one big union or organizing all the workers of the world. That's really the message of the workers' assemblies, is that now is time not only to talk about the need to organize all of the workers of the world so they will actually act like a class, act in concert, no matter what language they speak, and no matter what piece of geography they may occupy on this planet, they act as one class. The workers' assemblies, comrades, is a big step in that direction. And that's the direction that heads to revolution.
And it also, Larry, makes me think of something that Chris said earlier, which is we don't need to have a union to start acting like we're in a union.
That's there's no more important lesson. You see, that's so key. And this is why, there's something very wonderful going on. Everybody should know about it. I know Chris knows about it. I know about it. I know Ted knows about it. Ezra knows about it. A lot of the comrades and workers will know about it. Young people, and my understanding is that it's actually stepped up since Alabama, since the Union defeat. They're angry about that stuff.
Hell yeah.
And what they're doing is they're agreeing to get a job somewhere in Amazon. They call them seeds. When you go in to organize, this is a very courageous thing. And you have lots of young activists who are seeding Amazon coast to coast. We have to support these people. It is our revolutionary obligation to support these people. They got to know that once you go in, you got people on the outside, just like incarcerated workers who didn't sign up for a damn thing, but are in jail. We don't call them prisoners no more. We call them incarcerated workers because they're doing all sorts of things that ordinary workers who are not in jail do. They just don't get paid anything. It's a form of slavery. That's why there's a new class consciousness amongst incarcerated workers. So, and it's the same thing when you talk about Mumia. Most important thing for Mumia, the only reason why this comrade is alive is because there's a movement outside that follows him, that cares about him, that says you cannot do everything you want to do to him. Right. And that holds true for every incarcerated worker and also for every worker who's temporarily incarcerated in some warehouse.
Exactly.
Where they're being terrorized and surveilled and sped up by Jeff Bezos and his monsters. They got to know that for every worker in an Amazon warehouse or in Walmart or in Target or in Burger King and McDonald's, or you name it, for every worker, there's 100 workers outside who got your back, for everyone. Maybe 1,000. Then the bosses will know you can't limit the class struggle. We will draw the dimensions of the class struggle, not you. You can't do it with walls. We won't allow you to do it. Those are the workers' assemblies.
I think that's such a great message to end on, Larry. And that's true of Bezos. That's true of every boss and billionaire. They're not afraid enough of us right now. It brings to mind that CLR James quote, "The rich are only defeated when they're running for their lives."
Get ready, Jeff. Put your sneakers on. He probably owns the sneaker company.
You better buckle up. You're not done.
Damn right. And I just a couple things in the chat before we finish. One thing that Joe said about the paper, in our incarcerated subscribers. I was talking about news getting into prisons, but Joe brought up something very important, which is also getting news from the prisons, from the folks who read and write us letters. And Chris, we'll talk after this. We'll make sure your dad has a subscription too. And Comrade Martha Gravatt, says that capitalism is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship of the wealthy class. And she said that, Chris, when you were talking about how Bezos and Jay Carney are speaking on behalf of workers. Like, we didn't elect them,
Right. Jay Carney, who gets paid to lie professionally. That's a professional liar, y'all. He's speaking for workers.
Probably paid pretty handsomely for it too, you know.
Pretty sure.
And finally, Comrade Maya up in Boston gave us a Philip Randolph quote: "Nothing counts but pressure, pressure, more pressure, and still more pressure through broad, organized, aggressive mass action." I can't thank you both enough for being on tonight, and Ezra, thanks so much for facilitating. It was a great conversation. I want to thank everybody who watched it as well. We have these live streams every week at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you don't miss next week's. The live stream is going to be about the U.S. military occupation of Afghanistan and the continued decades now of false promises about withdrawals from Joe Biden. That's next Thursday, April 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, both of you, comrades, and Ezra, thank you. And just want to say, brick by brick, wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia Abu Jamal and build a workers' world. Good night, folks.
Right.
Good night.